So, Rafa started doing my talk, really. We negotiate all day, every day. That's something we do, we keep on doing, right? From the moment we wake up to the moment we go back to sleep. We are all day negotiating. We negotiate contract terms, conditions, deadlines, agreements. We say yes sometimes, we say no sometimes we stall for time. Then it comes lunch. You have to negotiate lunch too, that's very important. And then we go back home. That may be at work, or and then we may go back home and we get in different kinds of negotiations. They continue, shopping, or what to do with the free time, or how many days we come to the center per week. That sometimes it's a negotiation too, right? Screen time for the kids. Some of the negotiations are trivial, but some of them may be very important issues, like how much do we spend or save, or medical issues, to which doctor should we listen to, which advice should we be listening to, or even whether to stay together with your partner. So different kinds of negotiations, but nonetheless negotiating. A friend of mine told me last week that his toughest negotiations were always with his dog. So, all kinds. When we think of negotiations, typically we think about talking to the other side, right? That's what we have. No, some say no, good. Some say no, okay. So there's different opinions. It's not always the case. So I was gonna. What was that?
I said negotiating with myself is the worst.
Negotiating with yourself.
My own self to do things that I shouldn't be doing.
Super important. So that was my question being answered. Thank you. It's not always the case. Negotiating with oneself, it's crucial, and thank you. That will probably be the topic of the next talk, but not yet, not today. Let's ask ourselves some questions today. And you know how it is with me here, for those of you who know, for those of you who don't. I see some new faces maybe in my talk. I like to talk with you. I like to ask questions, and you can intervene at any time. And I always say the same thing. I'll try to go fast, and if we get some time, I like to leave some time for questions. But you can ask those questions all along the way. So I'm asking you now, do you take whatever life offers you, or you try to negotiate a better deal? How is it for you? It's different for everyone. Negotiating a better deal.
When I was younger, I was trying to negotiate a better deal. As I get older, I start to be more accepting to the deal.
So for you, it's been different in different periods of your life. Okay, not always the same.
I think it also depends on the situation.
Depends on the situation. Okay.
If you're going to go to a flea market, you're going to negotiate a better deal. But if you're going to go somewhere else and you don't have
that room for negotiation.
smaller.
So you believe that you have that ability to negotiate in certain circumstances, and you don't have it in other circumstances. But you think that's the same for everybody? Like, let me ask you, like, you go to let's say you go to a store where you believe, you see the prices marked there, and you believe there's no room for negotiation. Do you think that's, everybody would think the same thing and do the same thing? No. It changes for everyone, right? Okay, and according to our beliefs too. So we said that. We said that belief. Success or failure of any endeavor or project, it may depend on your negotiating skills. True or false? What do you think? True? False. Okay. If true, why? Oh, you think it's false? Okay, So this is interesting. If I believe what you tell me, if I take it as face value, I may, come to the wrong conclusion. So that'd be bad for my negotiation.
I think it's true because in any endeavor or project, you are always working society. We're always, even if it's just two people, it's a negotiation always.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the success of your project or endeavor always depends on negotiation.
But you think the success will depend on your negotiation skills?
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And someone said false?
I say false. I believe it's false.
Mm-hmm.
I
Why?
believe it doesn't, because I don't, it's not the skill, it's the circumstance, what's being negotiated. It's a situation, each one is going to be different. It's not because I might be doing better
Mm-hmm.
in negotiating like contract, a business contract. I'm not being good at negotiating life
Mm-hmm.
circumstances, so that's why I don't believe
So you-
it's my skill.
But that's still a skill. I think the main point is the intention of what I'm negotiating. Because sometimes I am a great negotiator and I have great skills on negotiating,
Mm-hmm.
but at the end it's not for the right,
But
the best interest. Let's put it that way. So it's not the negotiating skills, but yes, what I'm actually doing. Because I can be really persuasive if I
Uh-huh.
want to, but not always for
But
the.
it still doesn't show that you're being persuaded to be successful. That's the thing.
So if what I'm hearing from you is that skills have an impact, but intention has an impact on negotiations as well. Is that right? That's what I'm hearing from you. Excellent. Excellent. Now, we may or may not agree that skills play a role or have an impact, but can everyone become a successful negotiator? What do you think?
Is that become or is that do?
B, I'm sorry.
I don't think everyone can be.
You don't think so? Why is that?
I think it's confidence,
Mm-hmm.
whether they have confidence enough to do it. They may become
Mm-hmm.
successful with training and but if everyone,
Somebody thinks yes?
Yes.
Uh-huh. Why?
Well, it's just like, are you good at something? Some people are going to be good at doing makeup. Some people are going to be good at making cars. You can be good at negotiating. You're not might be able to negotiate every single thing in your life, but I think when you want something, you can negotiate that too.
You can also learn the skill of
Mhm.
negotiation. There are so many books and talks, and I can sign up for workshops and learn from successful negotiators, and I can learn to be one. We can learn anything.
And I think like you mentioned before, the intention could be very powerful in this situation. Because I couldn't have any skills, but if I have a good intention and my cause is good, many people are going to see that.
So there's something that it is within you, it goes beyond the skills, that
Correct.
has an impact on your negotiation skills, on whether you're a good negotiator or successful negotiator in this case. There are strategies, right? When we negotiate. Do you have a strategy? Do you think you have one? What is it?
I'm never afraid to ask.
You're never afraid to ask. That's a strategy. It is.
No, be sure that it's not going to work, it's still going to ask.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't ask, you'll never know.
Yeah. No more strategies. Just asking.
It's a secret.
A secret.
Nice move.
There's confidentiality in this meeting.
Try to learn about facts, like related to started work.
Trying to learn the facts.
Yeah, like outcomes of previous
Mhm.
projects, all those things.
So acquiring information about. Okay. Mm-hmm.
I think people also use their bodies sometimes to negotiate the way they look.
Okay. So posture, image.
Yeah, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Seduction.
So we're.
I got some girlfriends that can do anything.
So seduction it could be a strategy for negotiation, right? As part of a persuasion.
I think I was about to like, part of persuasion is also knowing what the other person wants, so you can talk them using what they want,
Mm-hmm.
mixing with what you want.
So getting to the real interest of the other person, it could be important. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but
What's
that
valuable.
can be also manipulation, like on the edge of being manipulative.
Mm-hmm.
And then comes ethics.
It could be. Mm-hmm. Do you think that whether we say a negotiation is manipulative or not depends on the intention, or does not? It's not related to the intention of your
Depends on your ethics.
mm-hmm. ethics. Okay.
See a weak point and the other part, explain that that's not good.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Interesting. So many negotiating strategies, right? And many more. Sometimes many of us we negotiate through life in the wrong way, and we've heard some examples. I want to bring here three quick examples about that. Just first of all, I read somewhere lately that you should always assume that people are out to do the right thing. Should we expect that people are out to do the right thing always? No? Yes? Very, very interesting. So here within this room, part of us think that yes, we should assume that, and part of us think that no, we shouldn't. But then I have other questions like, what is the right thing? Or is the right thing the same for all of us?
What's the right thing that's right for me?
Yeah, but many times we take that, what we think it's the right thing, as our baseline for negotiation. So this is like baseline or red line. We use all of that. No, this is right. This is not right. If the negotiation crosses this line, I'm out. Tend to do that. Mentality versus mentality. It's to me, it was always it's always interesting the difference on how Americans meet someone versus how Europeans meet someone. This is very interesting, and it's a cultural thing, but it's a question of mentality. Americans say we're meeting someone in a public place, and we don't know the person. It's not uncommon that we end up telling that person all our troubles. That's not uncommon. Or, we exchange cards, phone numbers. In reality, we don't know anything about the person we just met. But it's very common to seem familiar even with somebody that you haven't met before. It doesn't happen that way in Europe. There is an entirely different approach. In Europe, people maintain a polite distance with others, and particularly with people you don't know, you haven't met before. You wait to see someone in action before you become friendlier with that person. And you rarely talk about anything personal. One of the things that shocked me for some time was getting asked, what do you do? Like, what do you do for a living? I was like, what? Because that's intrusive in Europe. That's felt as an intrusion of privacy, even rude to ask that when you don't know the person. But here, it's okay. You meet someone and you want to get conversation. Oh, it's an icebreaker. So what do you do?
We all make stuff.
I'm not gonna say nothing about that today.
My perception of that would be
Mm-hmm.
I do that.
Yes.
I think that's maybe
That's probably part of the reason why it's more business oriented in general here. It could be. Rafa.
I'm not gonna say what.
I was gonna ask, you have an example of the opposite that is common in here, like that is common for you, but here it's different, it's invasive.
Mm. I will yeah, I will have to think about that.
In Europe or Brazil, how do you start a conversation?
Oh, so many different ways, but that green sweater or jacket that you're wearing, it's beautiful.
Make a compliment and then
You
move
know,
on there.
and then you know we can talk about that or whatever other thing. Just an example, but you know it's not that personal or you know doesn't go into that.
It's always nice.
Okay, Rafa, there you have the example. So we would comment on say a piece of clothing, and that's you know that's not intrusive, but it may be here.
Another side, the kissing, when you greet somebody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the greeting. We may not know the person. We've just been introduced. We would give 2 kisses, and if you're in Mexico, a hug, even.
We do it all
3
together.
3 kisses in Brazil. So that's another example that typically that does not happen here. You shake hands. You would shake hands. Mm-hmm. Putting people on pedestals. That's another thing that you know, we tend to do. A good example of this is our assumptions on celebrities. They look good, they sound good, so they must be a good people, right? That's what we tend to think. I've done that many times, I have to say. And I'll just, out of the many times that I've done it, I'll bring probably the latest example, personal example. Elon Musk. You know, his advancements in tech and green energy and the weird things he's done, all of that sounded so cool to me. And I thought, you know, this is really cool. He's so intelligent. He's so ahead of his time. He's so, I see faces, but, and I can agree with the faces today, but what I mean is I've done that. I've assumed that just because, you know, he was doing all of those things publicly, he was, yeah, awesome, supernatural, not human, you know, from Jupiter or whatever you want to call it. So when the question is, why do we put on a pedestal someone we don't even know? And even with red flags, because I won't mention them, but there's been some red flags along the way until one finally says, no. We keep on doing that. And it's someone we don't know. We tend to do that. So why, in this case, we give the word of a stranger, we take it for face value. We believe whatever that stranger is saying, and sometimes we don't do that with the people closest to us. We tend to doubt those people. That doesn't make any sense at all. Mm-hmm. No. And yet, we do it often, right? In reality, when we idealize somebody, we are diminishing them. We are dehumanizing that person and making them into an object. And that's when we lose sight of ourselves, and particularly when we're getting the reflection of another person, that's what we are doing too. We are reducing ourselves. So when we expect whatever is impossible from someone, which is to be perfect, and we tend to expect that sometimes from people, and particularly people we don't know, we are just buying tickets for them to let us down, and that's something that sooner or later it's going to happen. And after all, how can we assess people or situations that we know nothing about, or we know very little about? But again, it's part of what we do while negotiating. Assumptions versus information. So the truth is that most of the time we only know what people is telling us. Rafa, you were saying, oh, I gather information about whatever I have to deal with and negotiate. But that's most of the time, that's just what we have, what somebody is telling us. And especially if we are not very observant or take very good care, invest in going beyond what people are saying, we make those assumptions. So many times we are willing to substitute our assumptions for reality. We don't go into what reality is. And that comes probably from trying to stay in our comfort zone. Okay, this is comfortable for me. I'm just gonna assume business as usual, or whatever it is. If we are in a field like science or tech, then making assumptions, that's fine. That's the way it works. You make an assumption, and then you test and test and test and prove, and that's how it works. But in our everyday life, if we do that, if we assume that just what others are telling us, it's true, or that's the way it goes, or even assuming what other people mean during a communication, that can be very destructive. That can be very, very dangerous. And even we tend to do that in social media a lot now. I'll just give you a personal example, but I'm sure you guys can think of situations in which you found yourselves having said something you didn't mean really what people interpreted, and that creates a problem. When the conflict between Russia and the war between Russia and Ukraine started, I wrote an article, a post, basically saying I think this conflict should be mediated. There should be a negotiation. There should be a mediation to deal with this situation. And the truth is that that was interpreted as if I was defending the aggressor by some people, even some people close to me with friends, which surprised me the most. But that's what happened. Whomever the person thought the aggressor was, because it was interpreted as if I was in favor of one or the other, depending on what the person thought. Oh, if the aggressor is Russia, in my mind, then you're pro-Russia. You want to benefit because even in a negotiation, in that case, you would be benefiting the person who made the aggression. And if it was the other way around, well, the same thing, right? So the thing here is that assuming it's easier than inquiring. You mentioned before, one of the tools we have is to question, to inquire. But assuming it's easier. And inquiring, it takes effort, it takes training, and it takes humility, to some extent. Also takes humility. I want to bring you today 2 case studies, and these are real cases that I have dealt with, I've been involved in, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to tell you about them, and we're going to use them to come up with some ideas about how to improve our life's negotiations, those everyday life negotiations. What could we do, right? So the first one is the case of the three sisters. I have to speak up. First one is the case of three sisters and a woman. And again, this is a real case that it's happening right now. I'll avoid personal details about the case, but three sisters that her father was married to this woman, and he died. And until the moment that he died, they all had a good relationship. They talked to each other, met Sundays for paellas if they live in Valencia, or for, barbecue if they live here, whatever. They got along well. Now he died, and something happened. Someone said something that upset another someone. Something was misinterpreted, and at that point, they split, and actually they have not talked to each other. This is more than 4 years ago, right? So in that time, although the father had left very precise instructions on what he wanted them to do, like how to divide things, that he wanted to be incinerated, and he wanted to distribute part of the ashes amongst the sisters and the wife, and the properties, what to do with them, and so on. None of that has happened. So right now, 4 years later, the sisters have no ashes, no pictures of his father, no personal items. Of course, the properties and everything, that hasn't been touched yet. Nothing has been done. And you would think, well, is it that hard? I mean, you get along with the person. Is it that hard to talk? What do you think that may prevent them from negotiating a resolution for this conflict? What kind of things do you think could prevent them from doing that? And this is a real life case that is happening right now. This is the case.
Well, in my view, if the father left everything precise, what he wanted to be done, and now 4 years later they still haven't done, because they're not respecting his wish and how he said things, was whatever happened between them after his passing, and that's why it's hard to finalize and get done, because until they can agree, I'm sure there is an unusual conflict with lawyers, and one pushes to the other, and like nobody sit down and actually see, this is what he told you to do, this is what needs to be done.
Yeah, but they can't do that. Lawyers, that's okay. In this case, there's a third party, which are the lawyers, and that's part of the, of course, now that's part of the issue. What else? What do you think, besides lawyers?
I think it's a boost of their ego, because whatever the father could have divided, they don't agree with it. And also lack of communication, because sometimes if you really talk to someone, say this really meant something to me, do you mind? Like you can exactly negotiate. So I think communication first of all, everything is
So ego and communication. And ego goes to humility, as we were saying before. Holding grudges, jealousy, and now that has surfaced at this point.
Yeah, it could be where they don't want to speak, so now that this person is gone, I have no reason to continue this relationship, no disrespecting the wish.
I think interest. Maybe they have different interests.
Different interests. Okay.
And if one doesn't want to speak, it's difficult for the other to try to speak.
So if one doesn't want to speak, it's difficult.
It is to have both sides' interest to have some kind of agreement. If you don't, you must put a lawyer to move
No, she's not. Yeah, she's not the mother. And they are. Of,
There you go.
But they were friends before.
they were friends. Truly, they communicated fine. Well, I'm bringing some aspects here. Part of what you said. One, it's the lawyers, but not just because they are lawyers. Yeah, but the thing is, okay, I'm the party to it. I could be the three sisters, or I can be the woman. The lawyers are there, but I still have a saying on what I do, and they work for me. But what we tend to do many times is we take at face value what that lawyer is saying. Like we were saying before, we take at face value what a stranger is telling us, or we give a figure of authority to that lawyer. And if the lawyer is saying, do not speak, do not say a word, then, people tend to do it. Mm-hmm.
He has a lawyer who oversees the division of all the stuff.
Yes.
And what you're saying is these ladies have gotten their own lawyers to contest
Yes.
the will.
Mm-hmm. That's it. So without getting into legal technicalities, that's what's happening. The lawyers are just creating disputes, legal disputes, so that this is taking, about 4 years now, I think, and it's in the courts, it's in the court system. Not inquiring about why someone is doing what they're doing, because they could talk to each other before, but at some point they said, I don't want to know what her interest is. I don't care. But again, that goes, this is no good for anybody, really. And yet, not inquiring about why someone is doing something, or what they're doing, the reasons behind that, the interest behind that gets us there. And trusting in force or power or coercion. Oh, I'm living in the house now. I have it. You can't force me out. Yeah, go to court. We trusting in that instead of other methods of negotiation. Case 2, I just witnessed this case, and it was interesting to me. The first one, 3 sisters and the woman, we tried to do a mediation. It has not been possible yet. This case, without going into personal details, but a couple, they own a house, and during one of the hurricanes here in the area, they had some damage. So they went to the insurance company and said, hey, we have some damage, come see it. And if you don't know how that works, they send somebody technical, inspector, adjuster, to look through it, and then the adjuster will say, yeah, this is the damage, this is the kind of damage, and then the company will look through it and say, it is covered, no, to this extent. So the adjuster came, and let's say he didn't look personally everywhere. He took some pictures with some technology and so on to look through the roof, but didn't go up there. Well, the person didn't know anything, and the adjuster said, the roof is fine, you have some damage here and there, but basically the roof is fine. Okay. So after the hurricane, these people found that there were leaks from the roof, and this is very, very important in a house. But they trusted what the adjuster said. Okay, he said, there's no, this is not from the hurricane, probably we had it from before. Now, sometime later, a couple of years later, by chance, the owner of the house discovers that some of the shingles in the roof are moving in a weird way, and he discovers this by chance and says, "Hey, we still have the leak. This is moving in a way that it's not supposed to. We have to go into this." And they went into it. But the thing is, they had accepted whatever the adjuster said at the time, and only 2 years later, they came with this. But they really were suffering the leaks. And at this point, they said, "We think this is from the hurricane. So, what do we do?" They talked to the insurance company. And of course, the insurance company says, "Hey, this was okay. Here's the assessment from the adjuster. Everything is fine. What do you want me to do?" Nothing. So they sue, right? Now, when we get to the negotiation, when we get to the point where people decide to, okay, let's sit and talk about this. One side is, I make it up. Let's say one side is, this is worth $100,000 to repair. That's what you have to pay me because there's this problem here. And then the other side says, "Well, you know what? I think you don't have anything, but I'll give you $500. So if you hear that, these two sides like that, do you think there's going to be a resolution? What do you think? No? Real life situations. One is offering a very small amount. The other one is claiming a very high amount. What do you think? No? Okay, I'll tell you. They negotiated, and it did resolve in about 2-3 hours. It took some time, but it resolved. If we think about what facilitated that resolution, well, for one thing, during that process, they didn't assume anything from the other party, because, and as I say, I was a witness to this. But if I come with damage in my roof and I say this legitimately with quotes, this is worth 100,000, and then the person comes from the insurance company and says, "You know what? I'll give you 500. Probably, I'll walk out. I'll walk away. I'll say, "You want to laugh at my face? What is that? You're not serious about negotiating." But what they did is they didn't assume anything. They came clean and came, "Okay, let's see. I mean, we're sitting here, we have a couple of hours in front of us. Even if it's laughable, what you're telling me, I'll stay here." And they were free from prejudice from the other side. Also, during that process, they were flexible. That's another thing that can help us in a negotiation, to be flexible. And something that surprised me the most, I saw that in the process of that negotiation, they built trust. So they came from a position where they were very far apart, but by exchanging, by asking, by going into the details of the issue, and by, of course, making offers and counter offers in a certain way, they were signaling the other part that they were willing to work with them. It's not always the case, but when you're in that situation and you signal that you want to work, the chances of receiving a positive response are going to be higher. And of course, when you clear your mind. So, to finalize, life negotiations. How? This is very important. In life, we are going to have to trust others at some point. If we don't do that, if we don't learn to do that, we're not going to evolve, we're not going to advance, we're not going to develop. And again, it's a process. So building trust, it's a process. We have to start working on that process and use whatever tools, all these tools that we have seen to build that process. Also, remind yourself that we always need to verify what other people say, that we have to test for accuracy, or that we have to assume that we have to think that our own assumptions, they may be wrong. So not even believe in what you think it's right. That may be wrong too. And explore our filters and our biases when we're facing one of these processes. So flexibility, inclusion. In this case, the parties were willing to include in their belief system, in their paradigm, what the other party was saying. In the case of the sisters and the woman, they're not willing to do that. They are not willing to include the other as a party to that process. And be prejudice-free. Empty your mind. This is for all kinds of negotiations. Whether you're talking about lunch, as we said before, or you're talking to spirits, same thing. Empty your mind, because what you think it is, it may not be at all. And finally, I want to leave with this thought. Two mountains will never meet, but two people can. That's something to always bear in mind. Thank you very much.